Penguin Random House Audio presents Radical Tenderness, The Value of Vulnerability in an Often Unkind World. This is the author, Gisele Barreto Fetterman. For my Uncle Telmo, the sun shines less brightly in your absence. Even if from the sky poison befalls all, I'm still sweetness wrapped in sweetness wrapped in sweetness. Rumi. No more apologies for a bleeding heart when the opposite is no heart at all. Danger of losing our humanity must be met with more humanity. Toni Morrison. Introduction. A Return to Tenderness. In 2019, a women's collective in Pittsburgh invited me to lead a panel discussion on the subject of resilience. The panel comprised an incredible group of women, including authors, self-defense instructors, photographers, and others, many of whom had survived and thrived despite experiencing abuse, poverty, homelessness, or other hardships. It was part of a day-long conference dedicated to disruptors, working to change the face of wellness and make the space more inclusive, accessible, and humane. The discussion was meant to be inspiring and nourishing, to show audience members a way into health that considered their varied identities and experiences. The conversation was wide-ranging. Over the course of 45 minutes, we talked about toxicity and harassment in the workplace, leadership styles, and the challenges of being the minority in all-white spaces. Most of the anecdotes and advice were laced with positivity, meant to inspire and motivate the women sitting in the audience who were listening attentively. This was all as expected, but I kept feeling like something was missing. It has always been fascinating to me that even in spaces that are safe, full of attendees who went in with a mutually supportive mindset, speakers often veer toward sharing stories of triumph rather than hardship, of getting over a hurdle rather than tripping on it. Don't get me wrong, I'm a bright and optimistic person. I lean toward the light, and I do not view my life through the lens of victimhood or struggle. I certainly didn't want the women to wallow in self-pity or sadness, but I did want to hear about how despair was released or how they dealt with moments when they wanted to break down, their struggles, their vulnerabilities, their dark moments of the soul. By then, my husband, John, was lieutenant governor of the state, which made me Second Lady of Pennsylvania, or as I branded myself, Slop. All of a sudden, I was very visibly in the spotlight. I was finding it hard to get used to the increased scrutiny and attention that came with the role, which had made me the target of vitriol and threats far beyond what John received. My status as a former undocumented immigrant, which I was open about and was shared on John's website, had become a subject of online trolling, with people calling for me to go back to my country. People accused John and me of having a green card marriage, despite my already having been documented when we met. And commenters beneath his photos would ask things like, "Where did you buy her? Where can I buy one like that?" Other criticism ranged from frivolous, "You dress like you're going to the club," to scary, including death threats. And what I was starting to realize, which shows you just how naive I was that my actions on this now public stage didn't just affect me or even our kids. Everything from the clothes I wore to the charities I supported, to the off-the-cuff comments I made at an event reflected on my husband too. Life in the spotlight frequently left me feeling raw, exposed, vulnerable. Likewise, the women all had a robust online presence. I was curious about how they dealt with the sometimes cruel criticism and trolling they were surely subject to on social media. So toward the end of the panel, after many fascinating stories of these remarkable women's successes, triumphs, and well-earned victories, I shifted the conversation. "This is all so instructive," I said, "but what do you do when things aren't great?" I looked around at the women assembled before me. Give me some tips, I want to learn. I wanted to get at what was underneath the women's success stories, hoping they would vulnerably let us all into that space between facing and overcoming. The women on the panel all offered strategies for responding to or overcoming criticism. Push back with facts, make them listen, get in their face, scream. Their responses elicited applause and excitement from the audience, around 150 women who had come to the event to be inspired and absorb by osmosis the fearlessness and fierceness of the women leaders on stage. I didn't expect the question to come back to me in the end, but when it did, I answered truthfully. Me, I cry, I said. The words brought what had been a steady stream of affirming nods and finger snapping to hush the tension. I sensed a feeling of disappointment roll through the room. Attendees seemed to shift in their seats and cast glances about as if to say, "That's it? That's all you've got for us?" I'd expected as much. Mine was an admission that many might feel embarrassed to make, one that likely didn't align with common perceptions of strength or resilience. It's the sort of vulnerability that is seen as a form of surrender, as if you are giving up or giving in to the trolls. But it made me ask myself, was refusing to fight back really a form of surrender? Was it truly off limits to talk about crying, much less shed tears in front of others, which by then had become something of a habit for me? Did showing true emotion in the public sphere have to be viewed as shameful or cringeworthy? It certainly was rare. As a society, we're much more likely to admit to punching a pillow or clapping back or publicly calling out our trolls than we are to confessing that, well, this stuff hurts sometimes, and then to sit with or even publicly reveal those feelings. People have been telling me to fight back for my whole life, but I don't need to fight. I don't need to be right. I have found a different approach, one that is authentic to me and that often leads to remarkable results. I show my feelings. I express my vulnerabilities. I'm not afraid to be soft, even tender, in the face of anger and hostility. But that's because to me, exposing this side of myself isn't weakness. It's my secret strength, maybe even a form of rebellion. To me, expressing and leading with tenderness is a necessary and even radical way of reclaiming the parts of ourselves we are forced to deny. Tenderness as a radical act. After the panel that day, several women came up to me and admitted in whispers that they were criers too, but that succumbing to tears made them feel like losers. That stuck with me. Why are we so afraid of revealing our soft underbellies? What I've realized is that, as a society, we mistake vulnerability for weakness or a lack of grit. We lean into toughness because we want to show the world we're not to be taken lightly. We want people to be wary of crossing us. We puff up our chests, we talk loud, we take up space in an attempt to intimidate others. F around and find out, as the saying goes. So many of us, men and women, act like the vigor and aggressiveness with which we respond to a situation should be positively correlated with how others approach us. The more you mess with me, the higher the chance you'll find out what I'm made of and get a piece of my mind. The greater your offense, the greater my response. And sure, that's one way to go. But it's never worked for me. Throughout my life, this mentality has hurt rather than helped me and the people around me. What we believe will relieve our anger or pain, talking tough, lashing out, exacting revenge, often boomerangs back into our bodies, eating away at us like a termite in an otherwise healthy tree. Hurling unkind words as a show of strength is not the panacea that many perceive it to be. At least it has not been for me. I believe that the more goodness we spread into the world, the more likely we are to receive it in return. It's a radical, even extreme, idea to many. And when I do bring it up to others, it often raises the question, then how do I protect myself? It's a valid point, especially considering the many ways, both physical and emotional, in which our society's collective traumas turn to mutual destruction, ping-ponging from one person to another and spreading like a disease. We poke at one another's pain points, hoping that it will relieve us of a sense of helplessness. And the expectation of this, of having to dodge these attacks, causes many of us to walk around with our guard up, ready to pop off at the slightest sign of an insult or injury. How else will we stop others from taking advantage of us? Better to walk around with protective armor than to leave an opening for others to hurt us. Better to be feared than to be exposed.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?